Good morning. I'm so happy you're joining me today. I'm Miss Angie, and I'm going to be sharing a story with you about Gideon and his army. This story is found in the Old Testament, in the 7th book of the Old Testament. Let's name the books until we come to the 7th book to see where we find Gideon. Are you ready? Here we go. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. That's right, we find today's story in the book of Judges. God was not happy with his people, the Israelites. They had disobeyed God, so God had allowed them to be taken over by the Midianites. The Midianites were not their friends. They took or ruined all of their crops and their animals. The Israelites had to hide from the Midianites in caves. After God's people had nothing left, they cried out to him for help. Of course, God heard their cry, as he always does, and he had a plan. God sent an angel to Gideon, who was threshing wheat in a hidden place so the Midianites would not see him. If the Midianites had known what Gideon was doing, they would have stolen his wheat. The angel said to Gideon, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "If God is with us, then why doesn't he help us drive the Midianites from our land?" Gideon asked. "He will," the angel answered, "and he has chosen you to do it." "Me," said Gideon, "how can I do it? My family is the poorest in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my family." Boys and girls, how many of you are the youngest in your family? I know, I'm the youngest in my family too, and sometimes it seems like everybody else can do so much more than me. But we have to remember that God doesn't see what we are, but what we can be with him. Well, Gideon wasn't sure that God was actually speaking to him, and he asked for proof from God. God was very patient and did all that Gideon asked. Finally, Gideon knew that God really had sent the angel to speak to him, and God would be with him to defeat the Midianites. So Gideon sent out messengers to all the people to join his army, and they came from all over the land. 32,000 of them came. But God told Gideon, "You have too many men in your army. Tell those who are afraid to go back home." So 22,000 of the men returned back to their homes, and 10,000 remained with Gideon. But God told Gideon he still had too many men. And so he told Gideon to send the men down to the water, and that the men that would be in the army would be chosen by the way they knelt to get a drink of water. So 300 men were left to fight in Gideon's army. Why did God get rid of most of Gideon's army? How could a small army of 300 men defeat thousands and thousands of Midianites? Well, God wanted to make sure that he received the glory for the victory. He needed the Israelites to know that there was no way that they could do this on their own. But remember, with God, all things are possible. Gideon divided the men into 3 groups. He gave each man a trumpet and a pitcher with a torch in it. What strange things to fight with! "Watch me and do what I do," said Gideon. "When we come to the enemy camp, we will blow our trumpets and shout, 'The sword of the Lord and of Gideon.'" It was dark when Gideon and his men surrounded the Midianite camp. When Gideon gave the signal, they all blew their trumpets and broke their pitchers and held up their flaming torches. "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon," they shouted. The men in the Midianite camp heard the trumpets and the shouting. They saw the lights. They thought they were being attacked by a huge army. They ran so fast as they could to get away. The Midianites were so confused that they started fighting with each other. And the people of Israel went after them and drove them from their land. The story of Gideon reminds us that God fulfills his promises and does amazing things through his people. Gideon might have been afraid and doubtful, but he knew that he could trust God. And so can we. We might not think we are special or strong, but God has the power and the ability to use anyone for his purposes. Know that God can use you just the way you are. Let's sing a song together to remind us of God's power and his strength. Are you ready? Here we go. My God is so big, so strong, and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do. My God is so big, so strong, and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do. The mountains are his, the rivers are his, the stars are his handiwork too. My God is so big, so strong, and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do.
Activity time!
The Bible tells us I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Gideon knew that his strength came from God. Today we're going to be making a torch to remind us of Gideon and his army. You will need gloves, tongs, red and yellow food coloring, a bowl with some water in it, 2 or 3 coffee filters, newspaper, and then a cardboard tube from either a toilet paper or a paper towel roll, and a blow dryer. Make sure that an adult or maybe an older brother or sister help you with this activity that we're doing today. First, you're going to put on your gloves. Take your plastic bowl with water and add a few drops of the food coloring. Yellow and red. Then take your coffee filter and put it into the water. After you've let the coffee filter soak up some of the water with the food coloring, you can squeeze that water out. Also use your tongs if you'd like to take it out of the water if you don't have gloves. Then we're going to spread the coffee filter out onto the paper. And then you will blow dry it, and that will only take a few seconds. Mom and Dad can help you with that. So that when it has dried, it will look like this. You can crumple it up, and then you'll repeat with 2 or 3 coffee filters. Then you will put them into the tube, and you have your torch like Gideon and his army carried. Of course, you may experiment with the yellow and red food coloring to get the shade of the flames that you would like. You're also learning in this process that red and yellow make the color orange. You can also cut out red, yellow, and orange strips of construction paper or tissue paper and use a glue stick to put your flames into your torch. I hope you enjoyed today's Bible story and activity, and that you continue to carry your torch for the Lord.